The big news in Dallas, Texas on November 24th, 1963 was that Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who was being charged with shooting President John F. Kennedy just 2 days before, was himself killed by gunshot in the basement of the Dallas City Jail. He was shot by a nightclub owner and reported mob associate named Jack Ruby in a shocking act in front of everyone as Oswald was being transferred from the Dallas City Jail to the county jail. For 60 years, people have wondered how a man like Jack Ruby could have been allowed to get into the city jail basement and put himself in a position to murder Oswald.
Chief Curry, would you comment on the presence of Jack Ruby in the basement of City Hall while Lee Harvey Oswald was being transferred? How did he get there?
Well, of course, it's been pretty well established by this time that he came in the ramp entrance, on the Main Street entrance. And the officer who was guarding this door had stepped away to permit a vehicle to come out. It wasn't necessary that he do this, but he had stepped across the sidewalk to assist a vehicle coming out of the basement. That's when Ruby came into the basement. And this was less than 2 minutes before Oswald was brought down.
Was that the way it happened? Jack Ruby just happened to saunter down the basement ramp just before Oswald was being brought down for the transfer? And he happened to get past Officer Roy Vaughn in an incredible stroke of further timing and luck as Officer Vaughn left his post for just a few seconds? Officer Vaughn maintained to the day he died that Jack Ruby did not go down that ramp past him that Sunday morning. Here is his official statement. It does jive pretty much with the story given by Police Chief Curry. But look at the date on the statement. It is November 29th, 1963, a full 5 days after the incident occurred. Anyone involved with police work will tell you that gathering statements as quickly as possible after an incident is imperative. That way memories are freshest, and just as importantly, stories can't be made up or changed very easily. So why did it take 5 days for Vaughn's statement to be taken? Did he have to be convinced to go along with the Jesse Curry story? Was he upset that he was being asked to state events happened when he knew it was a lie? Greatly complicating both Curry and Vaughn's account of events is the interview by Mark Lane of Nathaniel J. Daniels, who had a totally different version of what happened.
We are in the office of Napoleon J. Daniels, a real estate broker in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Daniels, have you been associated with the Dallas Police Force?
I was for 7 years.
In what capacity?
As a patrolman.
Where were you on November 24th, 1963?
Well, I was going down to inspect the assassination site around 11 o'clock, I guess, and I noticed Officer Vaughn standing on the Main Street ramp of the City Hall at the basement. And I stopped to go back to talk to him, and I asked him what his purpose was there. And he told me he was keeping anybody from entering the basement because they fixed to transfer Oswald.
How long did you remain in front of the Main Street ramp with Officer Vaughn?
About 20 minutes, I guess.
Did you remain there until you heard a shot?
I did.
From 11 o'clock until 11:20, did anyone enter the basement through the Main Street ramp?
There was one man about a couple of minutes before Oswald was shot.
Could you describe that man?
Yes, he was a white man, weighed about 175, and had on a blue suit, about 5'9".
What was the color of his hair?
It's brownish. He's bald at the top.
Was there anything else distinctive about the gentleman?
He had his right hand in his right coat pocket, and something seemed to be protruding from it.
What was your impression when you saw him enter the basement with his hand in his pocket?
My first impression was that he had a gun in his pocket. And then I didn't think too much about it because Officer Vaughn didn't challenge him. He just let him go on down in it.
Did Vaughn indicate any recognition or knowledge of who the person was when the man passed by him?
Well, I just assumed he did because he didn't try to stop him. I assumed he knew who he was.
Did Vaughn allow anyone else to enter the basement other than that one man?
No.
Where was Officer Vaughn standing when this man entered past him?
He stood right in the center of the entrance to the basement there.
And what was his responsibility or obligation that day?
To not let anyone go down in there for now. I know.
Have you any idea why he allowed this man to enter past him?
No, I don't know, other than just he knew who he was or something. Don't, that's what I thought at the time. He had to know who he was.
Did Officer Vaughn look at the man who walked past him?
He looked in this direction, yes.
Wow. So who is telling the truth? And if it is Daniels, does that mean Officer Vaughn was in on the plot to let Ruby into the basement to assassinate Oswald? The answer, surprisingly, may be no, at least in my opinion. The truth is that almost every Dallas police officer knew Jack Ruby. Many of them drank free at his club, the Carousel. By many accounts, Ruby was at police headquarters almost all the time. He was a regular face. Yet, both Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry and District Attorney Henry Wade will lie about how well-known Ruby was, both to them personally and to the whole of the Dallas police force.
A great deal has been written about the relationship of the Dallas Police Department with Jack Ruby. We have 1,200 men in our department, and we had each man to submit a report regarding his knowledge or acquaintance with Jack Ruby. Less than 50 men even knew Jack Ruby.
If some of you will recall, he asked a question from out here in the audience, or answered a question. He's standing right back here, and I didn't know who he was. I thought he was a member of the press.
We're at the Lewiston Raceway in Lewiston, Maine, with Mrs. Nancy Hamilton, owner of the Hamilton Stables. Mrs. Hamilton, did you testify as a witness before the Warren Commission?
Yes, I did, on June 2nd, 1964.
Were you employed by Jack Ruby?
Yes, I was. This was in 1961 in Dallas at his club, the Carousel, and I was bartender, waitress, and rather the manager there.
How did you get that job?
I had gone into Dallas not knowing anyone, and of course, the first place I went was the police department. And they were very kind and got me the job there.
They got you the job at Jack Ruby?
Yes, they did.
Did they know Ruby?
Personally, oh yes, very well. Vouched for him. Wonderful person, great man. Well known by the Dallas Police Department.
Did you ever serve drinks to Dallas police officers?
Oh yes. In fact, the Dallas police officers were the special boys, shall we say. We even had a private stock for them.
Private stock?
Oh yes, they wouldn't, bar liquor wasn't for them. We had names such as Hagen Haig or Black Label, the very, very high-priced drinks on the house, of course. You'd never try, and that was a gross oversight if you ever charged a Dallas police officer or any official of the city of Dallas or Tarrant County.
Well, other than the Dallas police officers, what officials did frequent Ruby's establishment?
Oh, such as your district attorney, which would be Mr. Wade.
Did you receive any specific instructions from Jack Ruby about serving drinks for the Dallas police officers?
Yes, in fact, Jack told me point blank, he said, Nancy, if you ever, he said intentionally or unintentionally, charge a Dallas police officer, he said, you might as well go look for another job. He said, don't offend them, cater to them, talk with them, even if you ignore the other customers. Bend over backwards to be nice to them.
Did Ruby perform any other favors for the Dallas police officers?
Well, yeah, well, favors, we call them favors, I suppose so. He provided girls, gambling, and booze.
How many Dallas police officers would you estimate Jack Ruby knew on a personal basis?
At least half, and probably 2/3.
There were almost 1,200 police officers in Dallas in 1963. Would you say Ruby knew 600 of them?
Oh, easily.
So what if Officer Vaughn, who had allowed men with press passes to go down the ramp, did see Ruby and recognized him as someone that was extremely well known to him. Could he have let Ruby pass just because he knew him so well and would never have suspected Ruby as a gunman? I think it's possible. If so, Vaughn would have been much more agreeable to go along with Curry's story about leaving his post for a few seconds and not seeing Ruby walk down the ramp during his short absence. It would get him off the hook for letting Ruby past him, and it would allow the crazy lone nut Ruby story to go forward. Of course, the questions still remain as to how Jack Ruby knew to go down the ramp at exactly the time Oswald was being brought down for his transfer. And, as I have explained in other videos, Ruby had tried to warn both the Dallas police and the FBI that Lee Oswald would be killed if the transfer plans were not changed. Ruby was clearly trying to get out of killing Lee Oswald. So who warned Ruby when to enter the basement at exactly the correct time? And why did Police Chief Jesse Curry and District Attorney Henry Wade both lie about knowing Ruby? Just more questions in the complicated conspiracy of the assassination of John Kennedy.